One of the major selling points about using Mod Organizer is profiles. But what are they? Why are they useful, and how do we use them? Those are the questions we're going to answer in this video. At this point in the series, I'm going to assume you've either watched all the previous videos or you already know everything about installing Mod Organizer, setting it up, and installing and updating your mods within reason. And you're interested in what this whole profile thing is. You've heard about it. It is pretty exciting, and let's face it, it is one of the major reasons you might be thinking of switching to Mod Organizer. But what are they really? I mean, what can you do with them? Now, whilst I've not specifically shown you how to create a profile for Mod Organizer, I have actually been using one since the start. And that is because when you install Mod Organizer, it sets up a default profile to begin with. And there is nothing really special about the default profile other than it is the first profile you have. You can rename it if you so wish. So, what is a profile? What does it contain? Well, it really just contains the settings, the setup for your modded playthrough. For example, in this particular case, if I select Audio Overhaul for Skyrim, the default profile now has that mod selected. This load order is selected for the default profile, so it has Dawnguard, Hearthfire's Dragonborn, and the Audio Overhaul. It has Mod Organizer managing the archives, and so on. These are the things that belong to the profile. What does not belong to the profile is the mod itself. Audio Overhaul for Skyrim can be used by many different profiles. However, this profile has it enabled. It has it activated and checked. That is what this profile remembers. But it is probably easier to explain this by just setting up a few different profiles so that you can actually see it in action. You can see the benefits, you can see why you would want to do it, as well as how to do it. So I'm going to deselect that. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to create a bare bones profile. And this bare bones profile is going to contain the essential mods, the mods that I could never play without. Now, I've downloaded a few mods just to play with. And for example, SKSE pretty much is always going to be in any playthrough I ever have. So I'm going to enable SKSE. Sky UI, absolutely. That not only is that a great UI, it also comes with MCM, which to me is pretty much essential. And Immersive HUD, for example. That's my own mod to make the user interface look a little nicer, the heads-up display look a little less cluttered. So I'm always going to play with those three mods. And I'm also going to rename the profile. I'm going to rename it to Bare Bones or Essential. You know, the Bare Essentials. That's a good name for it. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to select Manage. I'm going to select the default, hit Rename, and then rename it. Bare Essentials. For Bare Essentials, I have automatic archiving validation enabled because that's always a good idea. And there you go. I now have a profile called Bare Essentials with these three mods installed. Now, please do not think that I am suggesting this is the list of all the essential mods that I use. Of course, there are many mods. I'm just showing you this as an example, and I want to keep it reasonably neat on screen. However, we're going to pretend that this is my essential mod list. And then I'm going to create a new profile. Now, I can go back to Manage, or I can click this icon, which is pretty much the same thing. It will take me here, and I could create a new profile. My new profile. Don't worry about the default game settings for now. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to select it. I'm also going to have automatic archiving validation for it and close. I'm going to switch to my new profile. And as you can see, none of the mods that I've selected in my essentials have been selected. And these ESPs that I previously deselected because I use the MO managed archives have been rechecked. So there you go, I've created a new profile. In actual fact, let me go back here, that is probably unlikely to be the way I do it. Once I've created my bare essentials, I'm probably going to use this as the base for all of my others. So let's go back, this is my bare essentials. Let's say I want a new profile for a harsh Skyrim, I'm going to go there, I'm going to select bare essentials, copy, and then type in the name. Harsh Skyrim. This is going to make Skyrim a harsh place to live. Same thing, automatic archive and validation. And when I then switch to harsh Skyrim, you'll notice those essential mods have been installed or selected for this profile as well. And now I'm going to say, right, well, I want Frostfall. Oh, better download Frostfall. So I have downloaded Frostfall, Hypothermia Camping Survival, which is a great mod that definitely makes Skyrim feel a lot more real and a little bit more brutal. And I've made a video devoted to this mod. I encourage you to go and watch that if you are interested. I've also downloaded Wet and Cold, which give a lot of visual clues that you are cold or that you are wet. Both of these are great mods, and in actual fact, probably on my own personal essential mod list. So I'm going to activate Frostfall and Wet and Cold, and I'm going to move these two up in my load order, and I'm going to leave them in this order. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking at the load order in this video, so if I get anything wrong, my apologies. I'm just trying to get the principle across. And because I've made Skyrim a harsh place, I'm going to need cloaks. So I'm going to use Winter is Coming, and I'm going to use the craftable version only. This means that I will have to craft them myself. However, NPCs will still get them, even though you would think they wouldn't, because I'm not going to craft them for them. That is because Wet and Cold handles giving the NPCs cloaks. It gives the NPCs cloaks when it believes it is appropriate, when it is cold weather. So that's why I'm selecting the craftable version of Winter is Coming, and I'm also going to enable Cloaks of Skyrim, because sometimes it's the rain you're trying to fight off, and you want some thinner cloaks that will dry out faster. And there you have it. I have my harsh Skyrim profile set up, and I'm going to go and check out what that looks like. And there you are. We are on the cold shores of Castle Volkihard. My character has got a thick fur cloak on, and as you can see from his breathing, it is a little chilly out. Okay, so that was the harsh Skyrim profile, but let's go in the complete opposite direction now and turn Skyrim into a bit of a tropical paradise. I'm going to create a new profile. I'm going to base it on Bare Essentials, so I'm going to select Bare Essentials again, copy, and this time Tropical Skyrim. Close. I'm going to select Tropical Skyrim. Now you'll notice that I only have the Bare Essentials selected once more. All of the stuff I selected for my harsh Skyrim is still remembered, but I go to Tropical Skyrim. It is set now to the Bare Essentials. Of course, I'm going to want Tropical Skyrim. I'm going to enable that. Now that's a mod that does exactly what it says. It turns Skyrim into a tropical paradise. Obviously, I'm not going to need thick fur cloaks. I'm not going to need Frostfall or Wet and Cold. Wet might actually work. However, I think, unfortunately, it still thinks the place is cold, even though it looks gloriously warm. So we're going to leave it off for now and just run the Tropical Skyrim profile. And you saw how quick this is. I can go harsh Skyrim, run the game, and you will see my character in the fur cloak with the nippy atmosphere. Change to Tropical Skyrim, run the game, and see what happens. Oh, I tell you what, before I do that, I'm just going to change these. I'm not sure if they should be that way around, but let's assume they are. And let's run the game. And there you have it. A tropical Castle Volkihar. It is late in the evening, but you can still see it is A lot warmer looking. I no longer have the cloak on. When I breathe, you can no longer see it in the harsh, cold air. And of course, there are all these tropical birds flying around. It does look very colourful, doesn't it? So there you go. 2 very different ways of modding the game. And I can switch between them in an instant. Oh, and something that does apparently catch a few people out is not realising that when you create a new profile, my new profile, it does not necessarily get selected. So there you go, I've got my new profile and I'll close, but it's still got bare essentials here. That was the last profile I had selected. I have to go to my new profile if I want to actually manipulate it. Now, one of the real advantages to profiles is that you can set up different profiles for different characters, not just for different flavors of Skyrim, but for different characters. So, for example, if I'm doing a warrior playthrough, I can go along, I'll manage my profiles. I'm going to select Harsh Skyrim, copy this, and I'm going to make this for my warrior, Godkrieg. Okay, so Godkrieg, the warrior, I'm going to make a profile for him. I'm going to select that, and let's just say I've decided I want deadly combat for my warrior. So I'm going to have deadly combat for my warrior. This is a mod that makes the melee a lot more difficult, well, a lot more engaging. So that's how I'm going to run this. But then I also want a profile for my wizard. Well, I can just go along, select Harsh Skyrim again, copy, and this time wizard, and his name was Caranthir. Lord of the Rings fans will probably recognize that name. So, and I will select wizard Caranthir, and he is going to use Fendrix Magic Evolved. So I now have 2 not very different at the moment, but eventually they would be very different profiles, one for my warrior, one for my wizard. They're both based upon the Harsh Skyrim profile, which in turn uses the bare essentials as its base. But what makes having a separate profile for each character really worthwhile is the ability to link the profile to certain save games. Now, by default, you can see every save I have got in my save game folder, and this is from obviously not this load order. Let's say I wanted to play Godkrieg, and I've got Richard. Obviously that is not going to be the same load order as Godkrieg had, not by a long shot. And as you can also imagine, this save game folder gets very full. Now, I actually trim mine quite a lot. I take out old saves and back them up, and only keep the latest 100 or so. But I don't know if you've ever noticed, the more save games that you have, the longer it can take to actually list all of your saves. So, for example, if you want to load a save game that's down below, I don't know if you notice, it's falling behind as I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. I've reached the bottom, and there you go. Now, if you actually have thousands of these, like I have got many, many thousands of save games, this list will be so long it can take forever to get through. So obviously that is a little bit of an issue. But I don't actually have to worry about that. If I go along to, say, the Warrior Godkrieg profile and make sure I've got that selected, and select local save games for that profile and then close, you'll notice all the save games disappeared because I have made no save games with this profile. Now, if I start a new game and save it, it will appear here, and I will see no other games. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, but I want to make a profile for an existing character. How can I do this? I want to be able to use this function, but on an existing character. It's actually very, very easy indeed. We just go along to the Profile Manager and take a look at the Transfer Saves button. It will be grayed out as long as you have a profile that does not have local saves is selected, but as soon as you select a profile that has local saves, the Transfer Saves button will become available. Simply click this and you get the Transfer Save Games tool. Now it will list all of the characters it finds in your global saves. Those are the normal saves. As you can see, I've got 7 characters. I can select Godkrieg, and as you can see, I've got 2 saves. This is the last one from the major playthrough, and I believe this is probably the last one from my Conan the Hyborian Age playthrough. So I've got 2 saves, and I can now either move them into this profile, or I can copy them. So if I want to leave them in the global saves, I can, which I'm going to do. Copy all, and it copies all of them, so be aware of that. So it copies them across. I could have moved them if I'd wanted to. You can actually move them back as well. So if I make saves here, I can actually move them back to the global folder as well. They may not appear in the correct order, so they may be a little harder to find. I think they actually appear right at the top when you transfer them back. However, that's probably not that big a problem. So as you can see, pretty simple. So I click Done, Close, and you will actually see the 2 save games. There you go. Run just to check, just to show you what will happen when we start our game now. And go along to load, and now you'll see just 2 saves. And if I load this and then save it again, that will now appear in my local save folder. It will not appear on the global saves, so if I run a different profile or if I run the vanilla game, I will not have access to that save, new save. That save game only appears in that particular profile. Now, of course, you may not want to transfer absolutely every character from that particular save. So, for example, Richard. Richard has a lot of saves, and perhaps I don't really want to flood the local saves with that, and I just want the latest one. Perhaps in the Godkrieg profile, all I really wanted was save 57. That's what I was going to start. It is possible to do that, but not via this tool. If you want to do this from the tool, you're going to have to do it manually, but it's not that difficult. In fact, it's pretty damned easy, and it's worth knowing how to do because it's worth knowing how this thing works. The normal save games are found in your document folder, My Games, Skyrim, Saves. As you can see, I've got a lot of other folders. Ignore those. Those are backup saves and so on. And this is the save I am looking for. Now, a lot of your later saves will probably also have SKSE files. They'll have an ESS and an SKSE file. You'll need both of those. That basically means that save game was made with SKSE installed. However, you'll notice this one doesn't have such a file. That is because that is such an old save game. It predates SKSE. But I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to copy it to the profile. Now, you'll find the profile if you go to your Skyrim game folder, Mod Organizer, that's where you install Mod Organizer. If you go to the profile setting, you will see one folder for each profile. Mine is obviously going to be in the Warrior Godkrieg profile, and I will go along to saves. And you can see I have a bunch of saves in there, and I could have copied the file across, just one. I could also delete, I can copy them back, and so on. I mean, I don't need to give you a lesson on how to use file management. And you can do this for all of your profiles. So all of your saves, if they have local saves, will be found in the profile itself. And if you're wondering whether or not you can transfer saves from one profile to a completely different profile, the answer is yes. It is a simple matter of copying them. There is no problem doing that whatsoever. However, of course, you should consider the mods for each profile. So if you've got a profile that the only difference between the other profile is high quality textures, then you will have no problem copying the saves and then loading them on the new profile. But of course, if you've got one profile with Skyrim and another profile with, say, Requiem, transferring saves between those two profiles, well, you're going to have issues. The save will transfer in Mod Organizer without any problems whatsoever, but whether or not you can load that save and not have issues, well, that's completely going to depend on the mods you had in both of the profiles. And so, as you can see, this has got quite a few advantages. First of all, it definitely neatens up your saves so that you can find the right save for the right profile very easily. It also makes it trivially easy to switch between very different mod setups. But it also has another advantage. If you have a character, you play that character with a certain load order, and then you switch characters and play that for the next 6 months, a year. But one day you find a new quest mod. A new quest mod, for example, as I did with Conan the Hyborian Age. And you want to try it out, but you want to try it out on an old character. You don't have to worry about going back to that old character and then trying to figure out how all your new mods work with that character. You can go back to that character's load order, perhaps tweak it a little, perhaps add some new mods, but essentially have the correct set of mods for that character. It makes it so that you could just forget that character for a year, come back to it as if you'd never left. And that is a very, very big advantage. Another very powerful feature of profiles is the fact that they have their own ini files. They have a local copy of Skyrim ini and Skyrim prefs ini. When you actually create a new profile, it will actually create new versions of the Skyrim ini and the Skyrim prefs.ini that match the ones you normally use, the ones you have set up for your normal play. Unless, of course, you check this default game settings option, in which case when you create the profile, it actually uses the game's default settings, not the ones you have got set up. But both ways create their own version of the Skyrim.ini and Skyrim prefs.ini. And these files can be edited from Mod Organizer. If you go along to this symbol here for tools and click on it, you get ini editor at the top. And you have a copy of the Skyrim ini and Skyrim prefs ini, and you can edit them and save them right here. So, any changes I make here will only be applied to this particular profile. And of course, this allows you to basically customize each profile and optimize it for either performance or visuals. So, the Godkrieg profile I'm using, maybe I'll optimize this to perform really well in battle, but my wizard profile, perhaps I'll optimize it more for the visuals, perhaps push the U-grids to load a little further so I can see further, that type of thing. It gives you control over all of those settings, essentially allowing you to run ultra settings on one profile and medium settings on another. A typical usage for this might be to actually have a screenshot profile. So if I go to my harsh Skyrim, perhaps I'll use my harsh Skyrim as a base, and let's say ordinarily I play with 2K textures, the Skyrim HD 2K textures, but the light version for performance. And I have U-grids to load 5. I have the default distance for view, so everything looks okay, but not brilliant. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a screenshot profile, and I'm going to use the harsh Skyrim as the base. So I'm going to call this screenshot profile. So there you go. I've now got my screenshot profile, and I will switch to that. And perhaps instead of the light version, I'll have the full textures, and maybe I would add some more visual mods, and then I would push the U-grids to load to say 9. Now I'm going to say right here, this is not all you should do if you're going to be playing with your U-grids to load, which is a risky endeavor at the best of times. There are a few other settings you need to tweak, but for simplicity, I'm just going to pretend this would work just fine. So I'm going to save that. So I now have my screenshot profile that will have better textures and U-grids to load 9. And then I can switch back to my normal harsh Skyrim profile, which has, of course, the light versions of the textures and only U-grids to load 5. One other nice little feature Mod Organizer has is a configurator, which is a graphical user interface that allows you to tweak a lot of the ini settings without having to go into edit the actual text file. I think for a lot of people, they prefer to actually see the ini file. I'm one of those people. I like to do my editing here. I do enjoy seeing what the values are, and I always feel like I've got more control. That's probably an illusion, but there you go. However, if you like to do things via a nice little user interface, you can do this. UGRIS to load, you can alter it here. Now, profiles are very powerful and very useful, but there are some limitations and you need to be aware of those before using them. You need to understand what does fall under the control of the profile and what is global for all of your profiles. For example, the optional files. If I go along to Winter is Coming and look at the optional files in my Warrior Godkrieg screenshot profile, and perhaps I move this patch out of the optionals into the available ESPs, and then let's say I check it, I'm probably going to crack. Yeah, that's actually telling me this is bad. Don't do this, but I'm using it as an example. If I then switch to the normal non-screenshot one, if I go to Winter is Coming and look at the optional ESPs, the patch is no longer under optional. It has been moved down to the available ESPs. It hasn't actually been selected. It's not been selected, so it wouldn't crash this profile as well. But you should be aware that if I do that now, if I take that and put it in the optionals and then go back to my screenshot profile, it will have gone there. And even though I had it selected here, it has now disappeared and will not be in use. Hidden files are not specific to a profile. Now, the hidden files, that is a way of, if you go to data and say right click on SkyUI BSA, I can hide the BSA and the ESP for SkyUI. So those are no longer available. If I actually ran this now, SkyUI would not actually work. And these files will be hidden for all of the profiles, so be aware of that. So I'm going to unhide these because I need them. The name of the mod is shared, so if I rename this to simply be Frostfall, it will now be Frostfall regardless of the profile and regardless of whether it is in use. Things like the version, the notes, the Nexus info, the mod ID, and so on, those are shared across profiles as well. In general, I advise you to just be very, very careful when playing around with what is inside a mod. So, I mean, Winter is Coming is a good example of this. When you have a mod that has multiple ESPs and you might want 2 or 3 of them for one profile, but completely different ones for another profile, be very, very careful about which you have as optionals and which are available, because moving them up and down could break another profile. I would go as far as to say, for mods like this, where you might have different setups, it might be worth installing the mod twice. Once for one profile, second time, perhaps even more, one for each profile. It's going to very much depend on your load order. But don't be afraid of that. There's no reason why you can't have multiple versions of the same mod installed if it's got different settings, and that might make it easier for you. Just come up with a good naming convention. You know, Winter is Coming Cloaks, harsh profile. I mean, it's easy enough to do. You just add something in the parenthesis there and then install the mod once more. In actual fact, the mod organizer makes that quite easy for you. So for example, let's say for my Godkrieg installation, I got something different and I want a slightly different setup for Winter is Coming. I can deselect the current one, hit reinstall mod, and select the things I need. Perhaps this one I don't want any guards to have them. I really don't want the guards to have them. And this time I'll do rename. Cloaks. God Krieg. Okay. And it will actually create a copy of itself. A new winter is coming. I'll put that one up there instead. And this one has the no cloaks option. Obviously, it has no optional ESPs because I installed it via the installer. As I've said, you can, if you want, when doing things like that. If I reinstall that again, I can get a little bit more complicated and do the manual installation and then manipulate the plugins exactly where I want them and add certain of the plugins to the optional folder so that at a later date I could even change the Godkrieg one as well. However, I've already covered that in a previous video. What the profile will remember is the order in which the mods appear. So I can have Sky UI all the way at the bottom if I want for the Warrior Godkrieg, switch to my wizard, and it's still where I left it. That does not change. The load order of the ESPs is controlled for each profile, so that is independent. You can change these, and obviously you can see quite clearly which mods are selected is very much part of the profile. So if I deselect these two, even though they are available in my mod list and then switch to Harsh Skyrim, it has not deselected them there, and the load order has been remembered. So those things are controlled by the profile. Oh, and one quick warning for anybody who's just run off and tried the hide feature under the data tab. Just be aware that if you do something like hide an ESP and look at your plugins, it will disappear from your plugins list as you would expect. If you then re-enable it and go back to your plugins, it's been added but not selected. So keep that in mind. However, that's only if you visited the plugins tab after you've hidden it. If you go back to, say, Harsh Skyrim, it still has iHUD selected, but the... which one was it? Was it the screenshots one? The profile I looked at the plugins for, it has deselected. So you need to reselect it and resort the load order. And it doesn't matter which plugin you have active when you do this. So for example, if I go and hide iHUD ESP and then switch to the Bare Essentials and then look, you'll notice it's disappeared. If I then go back to my screenshot data, unhide, and then go Bare Essentials, again, iHUD ESP deselected and moved in the load order. Actually, I think it was at the bottom anyway. So just be aware of that. If you've been playing with the hide feature on ESPs, it will have deselected them. So just double check that. And be careful of doing things like removing a mod because you don't need it for that profile. You will remove it from Mod Organizer and therefore every profile. So if there's a profile using one of these mods and I remove it whilst I've got this profile active, it will be gone for all of them. Just be aware of that. If you do delete mods by accident, do not panic. It's not that hard to get them back. You don't have to download them and set them all up again. If you actually go along to your Skyrim folder, go to Mod Organizer and the Mods folder, you will see a folder for each one of your mods. And if you do something like accidentally remove the Audio Overhaul mod, it will actually disappear from this list. Now, the reason you shouldn't worry is you just go along to your recycle bin and you'll find it. Restore it, it should appear back, and it doesn't automatically appear here by the looks of things, so I'm going to refresh, and there it is, Audio Overhaul for Skyrim back. No problem whatsoever. And that is about it for this video. So far we have learned how to download and install mods, how to update them, and how to set up profiles, which is a very important step. But we have many more things to learn, such as how to handle conflicts, how to run third-party programs such as Loot through Mod Organizer. But before we do that, in the next video I'm going to cover a very important subject, a subject I get asked about rather a lot. And that is, how on earth do I transfer all of my mods from Nexus Mod Manager over to Mod Organizer? And so that is what I'm going to do in the next part. So, if that subject is of interest to you, you are more than welcome to join me on that video, and I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, remember as always, have fun.